Welcome to Turtle Island Tetragrammaton. My name is Nicholas Jeremiah. I might have read this before, but I wanted to at least look at it again. I'm reading Walter Russell's home study course from the University of Science and Philosophy. It is worthy to note I am blocked by Matt Presti on X. Matt, if you see this, unblock me. I'm skipping through this. It's not really meant to be read or distributed, but this is how I process information, so I find it useful. There's a certain way you're supposed to read the home study course, right? But I've just had this for 5 years at least. And every time I pick it up, I always learn something from Walter Russell, the Illuminate. Skipping ahead here to this passage that stood out to me, which is, I'm going to read the whole thing. It is 5 pages long, this subtopic. And the header here is what drugs are doing to the human race. And before I read that, I'm going to start with the previous topic, the great destroyer of unfolding man. So I'll read that section and then go into the next section, which carries on for 4 pages. So right. Yeah, he clearly talks about alcohol and tobacco. I'm not other drugs and narcotics, poisoning. Yeah, so trigger warning. If you have certain addictions like alcohol, tobacco, anything else, weed, cocaine, oxys, then this might trigger you because you're not ready to give it up yet. But this is for those awakening souls who are ready to advance. Personally, I've had to quit. I'm almost, I'm a year and 9 months off alcohol. That's been pretty positive for my life. I'm working on the weed still, and then nicotine. I got a nicotine addiction. So I'm going to read what Walter Russell has to say about this stuff. Because for me, especially, I've talked about it, is I admire, it may be old hat to kind of talk about the phrase woke. A woke is like, you know what a woke is. Or just like people who go to shows that they do a lot of drugs. And then they're all about love. They talk about love, but then they do all these drugs and harm themselves. Like, that's the thing. They're looking for enlightenment. Whatever. So I gotta take what he says with a grain of salt, because obviously he's not schooled in the idea of plant medicine, of plant healing. He's not schooled. Is Walter Russell somehow disconnected from the earth? I mean, he was inspired by the mother, father, creator, God. So I'm not trying to endorse any of what he's saying. I just need to understand it. If I understand this, then I can decide what I want with it. Right? I'm not trying to say this is the truth. Walter Russell, that's why I was blocked by Matt Presti. I was like, who is this Illuminate? And why should it matter? That's what I was telling Matt. That's what I was like tweeting about Walter Russell. And obviously Matt Presti found my hashtag and blocked me. You know, I'm not gonna fucking, it's called guru mentality. I'm not gonna say Walter Russell was this master. I could go into the specifics of Walter Russell's higher self and determine, oh, okay, he played his role and he made a lot of, maybe he made some errors or miscalculations. This is not, it's not infallible. His wisdom is not infallible. There's an agenda to this, right? Clearly. But let's see if we can glean some wisdom from what he has to say. You know, this whole study course is about, oh yeah, then it's like a talking about enlightened society kind of, where everybody fucking wakes up. There's reasons we're not gonna get there, and maybe by reading about this, we could kind of parse it out. So I'm gonna get started on writing here. The time is 7 minutes 15. The great destroyer of unfolding man. The supreme tragedy of this age is not alone in its wars. Wars destroy the best blood of a small percentage of whole peoples. But alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs are destroying an extremely large percentage of men, women, and teenage children of the whole world, who are slaves to the slow mental and physical poisoning by nicotine and other drugs and narcotics. For a whole century, this decaying process of man has been growing upon so huge a scale that tobacco and drugs are now rated as 2 of the 5 greatest, quote, industries of the world. The great danger in use of such drugs as tobacco lies in the ignorance of people as to what such drugs are doing to them. Subtitle: What drugs are doing to the human race. Awakening man is unfolding in the direction of his spiritual divine self. A small fraction of the human race has already been sufficiently illumined with the light of God awareness to deeply desire to live in the light and know its ecstasy. To these few of the many, soul will absolutely dominates the matter, which is their bodies. These few are finding the kingdom of heaven within their consciousness and can know its heavenly rhythms by being enabled to completely forget their bodies. Forgetfulness of body and command of body by soul will are the supreme achievements of the mystic and the genius who know the ecstasy of the divine light. It has taken millions of years and countless reincarnations for the unfolding of cosmic man to that high stage where he can sever body sensation from his consciousness to the extent that he can be entirely freed from domination by his sensed body and master it by his own will. No, it says soul. By his own soul. Millions upon millions of humans who have already arrived at that very door to the kingdom of heaven are now closing that door by becoming enslaved by their own bodies through nicotine. That simple, seemingly harmless, but insidious and treacherous, slow-acting drug, which is closing the long-sought door to the light for countless millions. People who habitually smoke cannot either forget or rule their bodies. Drug addicts are ruled by their bodies to the exclusion of soul awareness, except at rare intervals when just the right amount of drug balances their changed normality for a few moments in intervals between the action and reaction cycles of the drug poisonings. It is claimed that smoking does not injure the body physically. That is not true, for it causes innumerable injuries, ranging from stomach ulcers, lung and throat infections, to lung cancers and heart weakness. But that is not important, because the body is not of the first importance. The important fact is that smoking gradually depolarizes the reasoning and thought processes to such an extent that time cycles develop in which the body periodically demands nicotine to stimulate the brain cells. Then the body demands another cigarette. The human body is made up of a formula which consists almost entirely of oxygen, hydrogen, carbon, and nitrogen. The large portions of these elements total 98.5% of man's whole body structure. The other 1.5% is made up of mineral salts, but infinitesimally small quantities. There is no nicotine in any of that 1.5%, and that is why it is injurious. No one can take anything into his body which is not prescribed for him in his body formula. Nicotine or other drugs are not included in it. Therefore, they are injurious to him in many physical ways, but more injurious to him mentally. Any drug has a stupefying effect upon the brain cells, which makes clear thinking more difficult. You gotta go away, dude. It is a strange fact that when the brain is dulled by drugs, the only cure for it is more drugs, which bring back normalcy for a while. Then more drugs become necessary until the habit is one demanded by the body. Slavery then follows. Some smokers' bodies demand only 6 or so cigarettes a day. Others demand one every 20 minutes. These become, quote, chain smokers, end quote, who have lost practically all soul will. Chain smokers are body slaves to a drug. He who would deny his slavery to nicotine may prove his freedom from it by asserting his willpower over the nicotine. Not 1 in 1,000 longtime smokers ever succeeds in proving his own willpower over nicotine to be greater than the power of nicotine over him. That fact of body slavery is the most important. I'm trying to say, fuck. I'm just making up words. That fact of body slavery is the I almost said it again. It doesn't say most. That fact of body slavery is the important thing for any man to ponder over who is in search of his own soul and its dwelling place in the high heavens of God's light. I gotta take a break. I'll continue here. Willpower, that's what I'm trying. Willpower. This shit's crazy to me. Man is divine. He is the Son of God when he knows it, he is. But he can never know it through body sensing. He can only know it through the ecstasy of inspiration while in the light. Eternal man is omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent. But the body of man is but sensed clay and has neither power nor knowledge. Just as long as man is but sensed clay, he is sensed clay, and no more. The human race is seeking the kingdom of heaven through the Spirit. The inner voice of God is always directing every man to the door of light. But as long as man is but sensed clay, he cannot hear that inner voice. What is this, man? Therein lies the tragedy of man's suicide of the spirit by the use of alcohol, nicotine, and other drugs. Habitual users of nicotine and alcohol so effectively change the polarity of their bodies that they are more and more effectually shut out of the inner voice as they suppress spirit in favor of gratifying the senses. Even the genius mind, who becomes addicted to either nicotine or alcohol in excess, is unable to express his genius until the stimulation of the drug allows him to become aware of the light in him for just a short interval. Then nicotine or alcohol calls loudly to his senses, and he reaches out for the drug to which his body is enslaved. One of our greatest orators could not make a speech until he had given his body a quart of whiskey. That amount of the drug changed his normalcy to the point where he could think brilliantly for a little while. Then came the reaction, and the light which shone from him for just a little while grew dim, then darkened, and this otherwise great man wept because of what his slavery cost him. Think of the tragedy of a great mind realizing that he could never rise to the height of his self except through drugging his body. The great spiritual awakening of unfolding man can come only through awareness of the light in man. Alcohol and nicotine taken into the body in sufficient quantities to change one's polarity so much that the normal body polarity is lowered to an artificial one and prevents any user of such drugs from manifesting God in him, except during those ever-lessening intervals when the drug stimulates him enough to allow him to reach his artificial normalcy. For brief moments he may even look upon the face of God and create inspired art while momentarily free, but those moments ever lessen as the bonds of slavery tighten to tear him from his high throne of the spirit of eternal man to become again but sensed clay of earth. God's words in his message of the divine Iliad are so clear and explicit upon this subject that we will write them here for your deep meditations. I'll just end with that. I'll read about the clay, right? And I hope you have a beautiful and blessed day. Let's just finish off this section and I'll close the video. This is a passage from the Divine Iliad by Walter Russell, inspired by the Mother, Father, Creator. Quote, "For I say that man who senses but clay of earth in him is bound to earth as clayed image of earth. Clayed images of my imagining, who know not me in them, are but dwellers of earth's dark. To sensed man, the doors of my kingdom are self-barred by darkness, until the light of me in him is known by him as me. Until then he is but moving clay, manifesting not me in him, while sensing not but moving clay of him, knowing not the glory of my light in him. Wherefore I say to thee, exalt thou thyself beyond thy sensing. Know me as fulcrum of thy thinking. Be me as deep well of thy knowing. End quote.